Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is a fantastic Tuesday. I know I say that every Tuesday, and it's like completely, totally plausible because we're going to be talking about some of my favorite things in the world, which is our 2020 Pre-accelerator. We're having our startup spotlight with Jarrette Shule, the founder of TenFore Golf. This is 6 out of 7 spotlights that we are doing on this Pre-accelerator series as we lead up to our demo day, September 18th. Stay tuned for more information on how that goes. With that, I'd really love to turn things over to Jarrette so he can tell a little bit more about himself. Could you please give our viewers a little bit of a background on your experience?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Um, I got a programming degree or information systems degree in 2004. Um, been worked for a bunch of different companies since then. About half big, half startup. So in '08, I got my first startup job as a full stack engineer, and been doing startups ever since. This is my sixth one, and this is the first one that is mine. So it's been good because I've learned kind of from the mistakes of other startups I've been with, namely not having a direction on the business side, just worrying too much about the tech.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I'm really excited about this interview with you because I think it's going to be a fantastic resource for other founders who are out there, especially since you seem like a veteran at this point in terms of this, maybe like brand new, like you said, to being your own founder of your own company, but getting involved in startups. You kind of learn from, you get muscle memory, I guess, but it doesn't prepare you for all the things. And it is kind of a huge shift. Um, well, since you are the founder of TenFore Golf, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got started and how TenFore Golf came into being?
Yeah, so I was a big golfer. I did a lot of remote, all my jobs were remote for the last 10 years. I've been working remote. And so, kind of, my outlet was golf. I kind of picked it up late in life. And one of the big things that, one of the pain points that my friends were always talking about was it was so hard to get a beer on the golf course. And so they had these beverage carts that drive around, and they start from the first hole and they go around to the 18th hole and they just do circles. And so you see that employee like maybe twice around, and over 4 hours. And so the guys I were playing with like wanted something like every 20 minutes. And so I just I just thought it would be a good idea to build an app that was just kind of like gives golfer the ability to just Uber a beer to themselves, so to speak, where they could just pull out their phone and order a 6 pack of beer, and the employee would know their location. The transaction was already paid for. The person was tipped already, and it would just streamline the process. And so that's kind of how everything started. Um, and of course, going to market, I realized that the market wasn't really ready for it. Number one, and number two, um, the point of sale and software companies that in this space were not willing to integrate with kind of new tech forward innovations. They were just kind of stuck in their old ways. So that was the big one. It was like, hey, I'm a golf course owner. I really like this cool app where golfers can order stuff, but does that mean I'm going to have to run 2 reports every night? Like one for my point of sale, my restaurant, my pro shop, and then your stuff now. And so that was the speed bump that we hit, and that's why I just said, screw it, I'm just going to build everything, right? Because then it's my point of sale and it's my T sheet and it's my everything, and I can do what I want, and I can be as innovative as I want and not be constrained by anybody else in the space. So that's how it started.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, well, one, that's really cool. I grew up playing golf. I'm not particularly amazing at it at all, and I'm very rusty, but it definitely is one of those legacy industries that I know things like Top Golf has really tried to sort of revive a new interest in golf, or at least in driving ranges.
Yeah.
in particular. But I think it's a really fantastic idea, especially since, recreationally speaking, like you want to go out and you want to have a seamless experience as much as possible because you're already probably going to end up in a sand trap. You're already going to have to fight the terrain. Do you really need to fight to either get a drink or to have, a tea time go smoothly? It's all kinds of stuff. I think it's interesting what you touched on, that your initial entry to market didn't quite work the way that you thought it would, and having to hit that speed bump that you mentioned and sort of pivot your idea, either, well, not just pivot, but like actually expand your idea and make it a lot more comprehensive. Were you nervous at all about having to tackle such a big project? And did you feel like the clock was ticking on when you needed to get that out the door, or were you able to know, like, okay, this is where we're going to be headed and I'm going to take my time on this, to make sure it gets done right at every level?
Um, so to back up just a second, one quick thing I wanted to add to this,
Yeah.
my startup experience was the number one thing that surprised me about being in a bunch of different industries in different startups. So medical, oil and gas, banking, was that there are so many industries that it's not just golf that are just, they have old legacy software. Take medical for example. They're all of the emergency records are kind of siloed in this old system called Epic, and no one can really integrate with it very well or easily. You know, the FDA drug database is just a mess. I actually got my hands on it and rebuilt it for our startup, and not normalized data. It's just a complete mess, and it's just rampant in all kinds of industries. And as many, I would say to any founder that if you think that, okay, I can't get in this industry because they've got it all figured out, that's wrong. There's always a pain point in every industry. That I just love golf, so I wanted to jump in where my passion was and combine it with my other passion, coding. Now back to your question, um, which was, having to make this pivot and what my thoughts were. You know, I have a unique paradigm compared to most founders in that I build everything that I sell, right? So, and I was still, the first couple of years that I started this company, I was still contract programming to different companies and different startups. So I had the luxury of saying, okay, I'm going to have this side hustle. I'm just going to build it and see if it goes anywhere, right? Which is kind of backwards from most things where you have to get funding and then you got to find a programmer and you got to do. I just build it and then see if I can sell it. Probably not the smartest way, but it gave me the freedom to build what I wanted to build and take my time with it and not have to worry about any of those constraints, any of those cost constraints, because I was just doing it for free, bootstrapping it, working on the weekends and at night. And so I don't know, it's just a little different, as far as, so I wasn't worried about building a point of sale system. I was like, I can ring stuff up and charge people. That doesn't seem hard. And then when I got into it, I realized, my God, golf is like the most complicated industry of all of them. Like, and I worked on all these things because you have like this one business, but this one business has retail, right? You can buy golf balls and shirts, and it's got a restaurant and a bar. So you got all the food and beverage complications, a kitchen with printer tickets that ring up, and you have to take inventory on your liquor bottles, and you got to, and they organize weddings and tournaments, and they go out and try to sell like events, and then they have like this food delivery system, and it just goes on and on and on. And the more I would work on it, and I got my beta course in San Antonio, things just kept coming in, feature requests, where I was like, you guys do that too? I was like, okay, well, I'll build it. So had my company been where I wasn't a programmer and I had to pay someone to do all this stuff, it never would have worked. It's just one of those things where I knew how to do it. I could do it for free. And that's the only reason we exist today.
Thank you for that. And thank you for backing up and talking about the legacy industries as well. And, I think there's in startup culture or founder land, sometimes we get distracted by the very sexy, disruptive ideas that seem incredibly cool, very futuristic, maybe even at times, are super abstract. Maybe there's a social impact component to it. But
Yeah.
when you talk about real world problems and pain points and what customers are struggling with, a lot of those problems are not sexy. A lot of them are very antiquated systems, or the fact that they haven't been able to invest in the right kind of infrastructure, or just so many things have changed since they entered the market, but they were just building and serving their customers, so they were never able to look internally. And so I think it's cool that you were able to take an industry like that and combine it with your passion. But for people out there who are really trying to figure out, how do I build something of my own, if not your passion, then take something what you know and go try to solve those problems in those markets or those industries, and come up with something that's really innovative, but maybe not on the surface level looks as cool as other things. Though, to be fair to you, golf is pretty cool. But to get to the other stuff too, like, I think it's totally fine that you had a different approach to the market. Not everybody is going to come into things the same way, and they shouldn't, because that's actually what makes businesses so interesting and diverse, and what makes other people's businesses stand out, or your own for that matter, right? Like, you were yourself, you knew what your skill set was, you knew that you had the passion, and you knew that you could do it. And so being able to just go and do is so fantastic, especially if you're bootstrapping and you don't really have a team and you're trying to figure something out for the first time. I think now at this point, things have changed a little bit, since you do have customers. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like after you got, maybe like you secured your beta course, right? So how did onboarding that customer into this process look?
So I had a working product, and I knew it worked, and I tested it myself. And in my mind, I had like this ready to go product, right? So I just started calling. I just picked up my phone and just started Googling golf courses in San Antonio, right? And I just started calling them and just said, and even that was a learning process where I'd call and I'd say, hey, how are you guys, liking your point of sale system, blah 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 blah. And they would always give me like, oh well, this person is not here. This is the person you talk to. And then a lot of times it was like not just the GM. It was like, oh, the head pro makes that decision, or we're owned by a city, so you have to go to city council, or we're owned by a multi-course operator company. You have to go talk to them. So I just started evolving with my cold calling, where I would just try to get who's the shot caller, and then, oh, do you have their email? Boom, done, right? Put the email in a file. Now I can come back to it. And so my beta course, actually, it was just a timing thing. The Olympia Hills and Universal City, they're about $1.5 million revenue a year course, which is pretty decent size for San Antonio, above median. And I talked to the lady that ran the food and beverage, and she was like, "Oh my God, like what you're talking about sounds amazing. Like I just wanted to start shopping because we hate our solution right now." And it just worked out. We launched the next week, and so I was there. I was there, at the golf course, training BevCard employees, bartenders, managers, setting up the equipment, setting up the router, setting up all this wireless stuff, and it was all me, right? And like every phone call, they were open Thursday nights for happy hour, right? And so they would call me at like Thursday night at like 10 p.m. like, hey, like this isn't working right or whatever. And that next year and a half, like I got really close with management, and they love me, right? And I love them. We got really close, and we went through a lot of bugs together, like a lot, like to the point where I thought I was going to have a heart attack almost every night. Like they would call me, oh my God, the printer's not printing, this or that. And it was so much stress. It was a ton of stress. I didn't think I would make it some days. And, but it worked out. I just tried to keep calm and fix the issue as fast as I could. And, most issues I could fix in 10 minutes or less. And that's another thing that, if you weren't a programmer and this was your company and you had to hire somebody else to go and make an appointment with the programmer to get some bug fixed at whatever, it would take forever and they would give up. So it was just another advantage I had, being the cook in the kitchen, so
Yeah.
very stressful.
Most definitely. No, that sounds maddening. But at the same time, like, what we try to instill in the founders and the entrepreneurs in our community is like really getting passionate about solving customer problems and involving them in the customer feedback loops, right? Like you're not going to be able to build the perfect thing from the very beginning. And so it's better to just put something in the hands of your customer or, a user and work with them to resolve the issue, because it's only when it's live that you're really going to know whether or not the thing can fly, right?
Yeah, my ego took a big hit as a programmer. I was a very cocky programmer, and I employed the cowboy release pattern, right, where I was just like, trust me, it's good, and I just push it out, and I would break like three things, and they'd call me freaking out. They couldn't run their business, and a point of sale company, you're dead in the water if your point of sale system doesn't work, right? So yeah, it changed me as a person and as a developer to respect the fact that you're not perfect, and that things, if they can go wrong, they for sure 1000% will go wrong.
Yep.
So
No, it's a very humbling lesson for sure. But, that's transformational change. It is not comfortable. And, look how far you've come as a result. We want to remind people that this is also open to questions and comments. So if you do have anything that you'd like to ask Jarrette or myself, please drop them in the Facebook or YouTube live comment section. We'd love to hear from you throughout the rest of the interview. So because it's really stressful being a founder, I want to kind of take a sidestep. Like, how do you cope with that, especially being a sole founder, or you had been a sole founder for so long? The pressure associated with it is just, it's not a normal pace. So how did you manage that, or how did you cope with that?
I just shoved all my feelings down into my
No.
body. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're really. I mean, sometimes it is as simple as you just got to tough it out. You just got to go through the pain. You got to go through the mistakes. And every time that those things happen, you just have to learn from it. You know, and it does. It makes you stronger. It makes you more prepared for the next time, and it makes you very grateful when you bring on your first employee. I'll tell you that much, because it's always good to have help. And I have a guy now that I hired in March of 19, and he's on salary. And without him, I don't know what I would do now. I don't know how I did it before. You get spoiled. And so, like, I don't do demos anymore myself. I don't talk to customers anymore myself. I don't go on sales calls anymore. I don't go do anything except sit in my cave and write code, and then do stuff like this to try to grow the business and try to evolve as a founder, right? But ideally, I'm gonna remove myself from the code too, which is going to be very hard for me emotionally to do, because I don't trust anybody to be in here. Uh, Frankly, I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to join a support group or something to let go of this, but I have to have a life again at some point, right? It's been 7 days a week for the last 2.5 years, no vacations, no weekends. And I have a laundry list of stuff that is due like yesterday. So
No, I mean, you're talking about some very real things. It's always good to try to find ways to balance out all the stress, but the choice to build something from nothing, and to put it out there as an entrepreneur, it's hard, and you really can't get past it if you don't go through it. That doesn't mean that there aren't better ways of dealing with the things, but especially in your case, being a sole founder and having something be able to be deployable in just a couple of weeks, and then having, like, I don't know that you even had the time to really like re-examine how you were approaching things until you brought on your teammate. And I'm glad that you do, because that balance and that support of just being able to call somebody or look at somebody and go, oh my God, that's crazy, is sometimes just enough to give you that little boost. Like, okay, it's not all in my mind. I'm not losing my stuff. I'm not flaking out. Like, it's actually really complicated, but we're going to figure it out together. That's a huge lift. And the ownership piece you're talking about, They say that when you write a book, it's like having another child, right? Like you grew the child and now you had to go through the labor of getting it out the door. And so you're very possessive of it. And it's the same thing for your business and particularly your code, because I'm sure you've written millions of lines of code and rewritten millions of lines of code at this point. So
Yep.
asking anybody to step into your place, I imagine would be very difficult. And I think we can probably have a support group for you here at Geekdom. And if not, John's listening and we'll get on that. So now that you were able to get your beta course here in San Antonio, how has the San Antonio community supported you as a business owner?
Um, so I'm not really, I guess it's just, I really haven't had time to go out and look for help with that. I don't even really know where to start. I have worked with Crystal Darby out at uh, the small business, because I'm a UTSA alum. But you know, honestly, there wasn't a lot of places I don't think she could help, just because golf is so niche, and it's really hard to find when you're in a niche market like this. Even though it is a big market, nationwide and worldwide, um, in San Antonio, there's not a lot of support as far as there's nobody to like introduce you to like the most fancy pants golf course owner in the city, right? So I'm sure there's resources there, but I just don't know where to look, and I haven't really been involved that much in the San Antonio part of things.
Hey, you know what? That's totally understandable and fair, because when you do like niche stuff, not only did you pick an older legacy industry, but you also picked one that not a lot of people have access to or that's super commonly known. So, way to
Yeah,
go. Um, but you
but
mentioned something really, go ahead.
I just wanted to get this on the record that the vision has always been not just to stick with golf. 10-4 is more of an idea of facilitating and streamlining the experience between a customer that wants to buy something and a company that wants to sell them something. Normally, service based. So the original idea was I would start out with this app where you could Uber beer to yourself on the golf course, and that's 10-4 Golf. And then 10-4 Sport was going to be where you could order beer at the Spurs game, and you would know your seat number and all that, or a Whataburger or whatever you wanted at the game and not have to miss the game. And then I would go to bowling alleys. And so basically it was kind of like I was attacking all these I wanted to attack all these niche markets that don't have an out of the box solution that they can just go to, and it's tailor made for that particular niche, right? Like if it's a bowling alley point of sale system, they're just using whatever garbage is out there, or they're using toast off the shelf, which doesn't help them manage their lanes and or if you're at a country club, your tennis courts, reservations, and things like that. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. This is kind of I want to dominate golf first, and then 10-4 grows from there to different
No, I
niches.
think that that's great. And, proving the model or proving the concept or getting, a foundation laid is really important. And it's great that you have the mind to see how it could be applied in other areas as well. Because if it's working really well for this one largely underserved group of customers, then chances are there are other underserved customers out there that could
Yep.
really benefit from this. And, they're not the only weirdly compiled like models out there for people to go like find entertainment like you're talking about bowling alleys and other things, but I'm sure that having a platform like that is going to be really beneficial to a lot of different markets. And so I think it's very strategic of you to look how you could move this forward beyond this.
Yep.
So thank you for that. To go back to what you said about the San Antonio community, like mentioning the UTSA Small Business Development Center, that's a fantastic resource. If not everybody knows, like as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, if you live in the San Antonio area, your tax dollars pay for their advisory services. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can get paired with amazing people like Crystal Darby to sit and walk you through your business and help get you in touch. That could include market research and or marketing assistance. That could be customer research and discovery or introductions to potential partners, as well as through certification courses. So I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that. How are things going now that, I always try to talk about this a little bit because it's not the elephant in the room since we talk about it all the time, but how has COVID-19 really impacted things with 10-4 Golf?
It's interesting. So COVID's been pretty kind to golf because golf is a naturally socially distanced sport, and it's outside, it's in the sun, um, and so the big thing with COVID is that one of the ways it transmits is through air conditioning systems, right? And through being inside of a building or inside of a house or an apartment complex. Where golf, it's all about nature and getting sun and exercise outside, right? And you can be socially distanced from the people you're playing golf with. So golf did take a hit, but it wasn't huge, right? So because I see revenue numbers of my golf courses every day, and I've been at this long enough where I can see year over year now, right? So it wasn't a big hit, and on top of that, um, COVID-19 brought out the strengths of TenFore, right? Because TenFore is a new approach at a legacy golf management software system where it's like, like my customers, my golfers that use my technology, they can not only order stuff remotely on the golf course, but they can order gift cards, digital punch cards, they can pay for their rounds of golf all remotely, right? They can be anywhere. They don't even have to go into the pro shop to pay and for the round of golf. So they can go from their car straight to the first tee if their golf course uses TenFore, and they don't have to talk to a soul. And so a lot of my golf courses weren't employing those features, right? Because they didn't care about them as much. But when this rolled around, then Ryan and I sent out some emails to our current clients and to a marketing campaign where it says, hey, this is what TenFore is all about, right? Is being able to streamline and make that interaction more efficient, and you don't even have to interact with anybody, right? It's all the transmission is done just like a walkie-talkie, TenFore, right? So yeah, it's actually been fine for me. It's
That's
actually gotten me sales.
That's really fantastic. It's not that anyone wishes that these kinds of things would ever occur, but it's kind of a nice position to be in if you have been building something that is pretty innovative for that industry that can streamline all these things. And then you have a scenario like this come up where people can actually not just utilize it, but even scale or increase their use
Yep.
of the solution that you build. And that must make you feel really great as a founder and as the developer behind it, that you're actually building something very impactful and tangible, and that there is a future for that moving forward too.
Yeah, and it's cool because our golf courses, like our competitive advantages with our competitors, when we sign up a golf course, now they have a competitive advantage over their competitors, right? We transfer those advantages, and now their golf course does all this cool stuff that the course down the street doesn't do, right? But because they use TenFore, they have it. So it's helping build our brand.
No, I think that's pretty amazing. So, because you're such a developer, like at this point, super veteran software
Yeah.
startup developer, what kinds of resources did you find or did you use to help you with your career? I know that you said you got your certification a few years back, but like, what have you been going to? Because if you've worked across all the industries that you mentioned and startups as well, I imagine you had to go learn a lot of things that you probably didn't learn in your certification process. So maybe giving a shout out to these other tech devs out here, just kind of what works for you.
Yeah, so I do have a bachelor's degree in information systems, and it's funny because when I talk to people with degrees, and they say, "Oh, I never used what I learned in college." It's the opposite for me. I had an amazing database professor. I had an amazing web uh, professor, web development professor, and I really had to cram for these tests and put through the ringer. So I had a good solid base to start from. I kept all my old textbooks, and then I'd get a job. I have my eye on a job because I was constantly job hopping. Right, I would have a job for a year and a half, be like, okay, now I need to find a job that's a cooler tech and more money. right? So I'd switch jobs, and I'd always have my eye on the next step up. And inevitably, when I would get there, there would be some kind of tech stack that I didn't know, right? And I would have to just teach myself, right? So YouTube, obviously, Udemy is a bit one that I really like, because with the Udemy platform, um, you can find the tech you want. Like, say you want to learn Kotlin, right? Um, then you can buy the Udemy course and kind of take it at your own speed, and it goes from the very beginning to the very end, to the most advanced stuff. And so I highly recommend Udemy. They're really reasonable. They have sales all the time. It's like 20, $50 for an entire course. Um, but yeah, I mean, you as a programmer, you have to be willing to. You can never stop evolving, because the second you get comfortable in a programming language or a tech stack, that's when you're going to get passed by, you know, and you're going to miss out on all the exciting stuff that's happening. And I've got all kinds of cool stuff planned for the future. Um, and like, I've already changed the entire language of every app in my platform multiple times. So all of the Android apps I built at the beginning were in Java. Now they're all in Kotlin, all three of them, right? The iOS app was Objective-C. Now it's Swift, right? And even I even had VB.net as the web portal was built in VB.net. I've already changed and there's thousands of pages in there. Everything over to C#. And so, and I'm already planning the next iteration with Kotlin Multi-Platform, which is a very cutting edge tech that will basically allow me to have all my mobile apps be platform agnostic, where I can have one code base and it'll spit out an iOS app, an Android app, and a Windows app, and a web app. And it's just one code base in one centralized programming language. And I know there's other stuff out there that's similar, but this is unique. Kotlin Multi-Platform. It is truly a native application. Sorry if I went off the rails there a little.
No, that was the whole point. We definitely want to make sure that we're serving our technical community as well. And yeah. I mean, there are lots of developers who are coming out of CodeUp and UTSA and, UIW and other computer science programs or information systems programs that really want to figure out, how do I get my hands on stuff? What should I be looking at? And there are so many languages at this point. And because so many companies use, either very antiquated languages or systems or stacks like you're talking about, or you have these brand new companies that are building on the very edge of things, you said it right when you said, as a developer, like, you just have to be constantly evolving and pushing your projects out, because one, that's how you're going to get great jobs, and two, that's how you're going to just maintain your career path moving forward. And I think it's good advice for everybody in any profession is, don't get comfortable. There's always more to learn, and there's always stuff that's changing. Maybe not as fast as technology stuff, but definitely things are not going to be stagnant pretty much ever.
Yeah, and one piece of advice I would give to up and coming developers is, if you hear of make yourself go to conferences. So if there's a Microsoft event or a Google I/O event, and there's any way you can get yourself there, that's always where I learn, like, where I talk to people and they're like, you're still doing that? Like, it's so much easier now. You're making it so much harder for yourself. And I'll learn a whole trick, right? And they're indispensable. It's like continuing education for physicians, but for programmers. So get yourself to those conferences, whatever your favorite tech is, get there. Even if it's just once a year, just make sure you do it. Spend the money. It's worth it.
No, that's fantastic advice. I'm a huge supporter of conference events. I've attended so many over the years, and I even went in February to do my own personal development vacation to a Smart Cities conference, because, like, you're not going to have access to that kind of information. Like, you can go research online all day long, but something about being in a room with other people, or virtually or otherwise, COVID, but just like having that contextualized for you and being able to talk to somebody else, who has similar experiences, or even just a whole new unique experience to bring that relevance is just, it's absolutely invaluable for what you can do for yourself. And also from a networking standpoint too, like you're talking about, like just going and talking to people to introduce yourself to then could lead to customers, partners, other career opportunities or investors. Really fantastic advice, Jarrette. Thank you. So now that you have definitely more than your beta customer, how many customers, do you feel comfortable talking about at this point? And, how has their engagement changed or improved over time?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I brought Ryan on as kind of my catch-all employee. I stole him away he was one of my first customers. He managed 8 golf courses, and I hired him away because basically his advice was driving what I was writing. So he was helping me from an industry point of view, saying this is what sucks in our industry with our point of sale systems, and this is what's awesome. I love this guy. I hate this feature, whatever. And that's another pitfall as a programmer. Don't build what you want to build. Build what your users want you to build, right? And so if you can learn that simple lesson, you'll have a much easier go at it, right? You won't build features that will sit there unused. You'll only build features that are gold. And back to your question, I lost my train of thought. What was the original question? Sorry.
Well, my question was just like, as you've scaled up the number of customers that you've had, like how has their engagement changed or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's 18 golf courses right now using TenFore. And some of them are using, there's like 4 of them that are only using our online booking engine and T-Sheet. So we don't get full revenue from them. I think those are the only, so there's 14 that are using the full platform. So the point of sale system, the BevCard app, the golfer app, the web portal, everything. And spread out over 5 or 6 states. So we're in Kentucky and in Florida, Texas, and a few others, South Carolina, Oklahoma. And so we kind of have customers spread out all over. And there hasn't been a launch yet where the golf course didn't say, hey, can you guys do this? And then Ryan was like, yeah, sure, we can do that. So we'll just Ryan will put it on my Trello, like 6 new cards for this new launch. And it's fine, because I'll go through the features and say, oh, well, other golf courses will totally love that, right? So I'm going to build it. Or I'll be like, I'll look at it, it's like, no, we're not doing like I'm not building a feature where the accountant, if they're off, can just hit the button and it skips it, and makes it okay to be off. So you kind of have to pick and choose. But since we are small and hungry, I'm all about making our courses happy because we need them right now more than they need us. We're not this big hulking company. We're like, this is our product, take it or leave it. But it's, since we're a SaaS company, everything I build and make the product better, it benefits all of our courses. So, a course manager will wake up and say, oh, cool, this is new, right? And they love it. They're like, oh, there's this report now. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but there's
No, I think you did. No, I think you did. And thank you. Yeah. I mean, especially once you get that foundation laid and you can start building out those features that you're talking about that are, not just one-offs, right? They're not just custom pieces,
Yeah.
right? But they're applicable to so many of your clients and like how that's going to change the business for those golf courses, right? Because there are things they either didn't have access to or information to, or they were spending so much time focusing on other areas that took them away from either their core business or even new potential adjacent market opportunities that your system kind of unlocks. So it's a huge win-win. You are very clearly very technically proficient and kind of balancing this business side now, having Ryan kind of on board, what value or what kind of things have you taken away from this pre-accelerator experience from the business standpoint that maybe you didn't know before or, that you could take and improve well after this program?
Yeah. So coming into the program, I kind of took the approach that I didn't know for sure, like 100% for sure, if I wanted to take on an investor, just because we're pretty close to break even right now. But I knew that I could learn things from you guys as a community. Like whenever a bunch of smart people get together and they start talking about stuff that, like, this is my first one, like there's 1,000% chance that I'm going to learn something valuable, right? And so I took it as like, well, if I decide I want an investor, this is going to be great because I'll have my pitch deck all refined and I'll know how to talk to people about it. And if I don't take an investor, I guarantee I'm going to be talking to people about sales, about management, about how to structure my company, about how to legally distribute equity. And there's all kinds of questions that I have that I always tell people, like, the smartest people I know how stupid they are, right? So if you can just understand that, and I totally do, that there's like most things in the world I don't know and I'm ignorant about, and be able to just absorb things, right? So I'm here to absorb. I'm here to potentially find an investor. And I'm here to, and going through this program, one of the things that I really enjoyed about it was that it made me focus on from a higher level of what my company is. Like sometimes it's easy, like when you're kind of in the day-to-day stuff, in the grind, you kind of lose focus about like what is your company? Like, what is it about? Like, what do you from a high up level, right? And like, what are your core competencies? Like, what are your differentiators? And getting that drilled in your head every week really helps you kind of refocus and say, okay, well, I mean, is there another thing that I could add to my company to make me even more of a another differentiator? Like, how can I do this or that? And it makes you kind of think at a higher level, right? Which is eventually where you want to be, right? As a founder and maybe a CEO, is you want to say, what's the next 5 years going to look like? And you can't look at that unless you're like kind of day to day. Just anyway, I'm going to drill this into the ground if you let me. So I think I said what I wanted to say.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And this program isn't, it's not necessarily for people who are only looking for investment. Our mission is to really prepare local startups to either rapidly scale their business or prepare for future investment. There's lots of ways to get to that point of success, and that success is always determined by the founder. And largely too, like what your customers are expecting of the products and services that you build. So I'm really pleased that you're able to take as much as you're taking away from this too, and not feel the pressure to like, oh, well, I can't do it if I'm not going out for investment. No, I think it was a great perspective, and we've really enjoyed having you participate. And because you are the technical component for your company, I imagine it would be very difficult without having some kind of an external force to push you into thinking about those things from that higher level, because you're just constantly in the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because, I mean, if you're the one building out those features lists, then yeah, you're in your cave and you're building out through those code lines. And,
Yep.
so I think that that's fantastic. And it's a really great experience too for you, because you are so technical, to be able to go like, oh, actually, I really know this stuff. And that reinforces the solidity, or the validity of your brand, and what you're hoping to achieve, especially if you want to spin off into other markets as well. So thank you for sharing those things. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. Jarrette, having worked for so long with so many different startups, on the technical side and building stuff, like, what's some of your biggest aha moments about working in that space that you could impart to other founders?
I think, hitting that brick wall where everybody, I would tell every golfer, I would say, hey, this is the idea at the early stages. They're like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard of in my entire life, right? And every golf course operator that I tell that, he was like, nah, take it or leave it, and like you mentioned this earlier about how making that pivot in the company, it went in a direction that wasn't as sexy, right? Where the sexy thing was, oh, Uber beers to yourself on the golf course, right? Amazing. But like when you got to the market, it was like, we just need a better POS system, and it was kind of like, not as sexy, but I knew that I could use that boring stuff if I built one that was better than everything that was out there, which anybody watching this, you can. Just for the simple fact that you're living in 2020 and you're building it in 2020 and not in 1989. But once you build that good basis, then you can start doing the fun stuff, right? Like I'm already looking into drone delivery for beer, right? Or snacks or whatever on the golf course. And they're doing it already in Japan. So you can order stuff and there's literally no human involved. It's just, you see a drone coming with Bud Light and it's really cool. But it's that fun kind of cool stuff that keeps you interested in your startup, right? But now that I have this thing that makes me money, that churns the money, right? Then I can do all the fun, crazy, new stuff, right? And start working on the direct to consumer app and building that out and making that cool. Once I'm established, once I have at least 5-10 courses in San Antonio or in Dallas or in wherever, then I can start putting ads out where say, hey, get this cool app where you can buy stuff on the course, et cetera, et cetera. But being able to pivot, I know it's a cliche, but it's so big. You got to let go of your romanticized feelings of your original idea and listen to the market and make sure that you adjust. Because if, again, don't adjust, you die, right? Just like programming, same thing with founding companies.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a valuable skill for all kinds of walks of life. And I think, heck yes, that's super cool. Drones are very fascinating pieces of tech that are going to be implemented in all various walks of our lives moving forward, whether we're ready for them or not. And that concept that you're talking about, like having an established foundation or a baseline to that will afford you the opportunity and the funding to pursue these tangential or future visionary type things and validate them prior to implementing them, like that's huge. And if you can do that for a business of almost any size, let alone as a startup, you're in a really great position, because as a startup, you're super agile, you're used to having to juggle all the things. And so once you've got a good chunk of it set, then being able to drill down into these other opportunities, you're going to be able to expand and build on that even faster. So kudos to you for thinking about that. I'm curious, you're kind of a lone gunman, or you were a lone gunman for a while, like doing all this tech stuff, like, and you mentioned Crystal Darby as one of your advisors, but what is mentorship? Like, what role does mentorship play in any of this for you?
Um, just trying to find my thing whenever I talk to a mentor is I try to focus on their strength, right? Like if their strength is sales, then I just ask them all kinds of sales questions, right? If they're, you get it, right? I just basically, I just want to exploit the strength of the mentor and extract the information that they've accumulated, being crazy about and, doing their thing, right? And extracting that and then putting it in this little container, because a founder has all these little containers, right? Like I feel like my day is full of containers, like, oh, like my programming stuff goes in here, and then like my marketing stuff in here, my employee stuff and my taxes stuff and my legal stuff, and all this stuff goes in these containers. And if I have 30 minutes with the mentor, I say, what is it that you're good at? Like, what do you know a lot about, right? Because I'm going to open the container that you're good at and I'm going to put it in here. And so that's kind of the approach I take, get their strength, extract. And it's been great. I've learned so much from the mentors in this program. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of a little bit of a hard thing when you're getting started, I think, to go out and find like mentorship. I know there are lots of ways that people have talked about it in school, and, then applying it to your business. And then you have, your life mentors that are completely like personal development stuff that you do, but kind of learning how to nurture and grow your own mentor and network, and understanding those strengths that you're talking about and really leveraging that or maximizing the strengths of your mentors is a skill set. And you have to kind of figure out how that works for you in your business. And then, yeah, you want to make sure that you really take advantage of what they have to say, because they have lots of really deep subject matter expert or even industry level knowledge that you couldn't necessarily go get everywhere else. And you could read about it, you could go experience it on your own, maybe, depending on how many years you had to devote to it. Or instead, you could just capitalize on those relationships and in a way, that benefits you overall and also allows them to give back. And to be helpful, because without access to that kind of information, it doesn't help anybody. You're not going to get the adoption that you're looking for. You're not going to get the customer education you're looking for, or the awareness either.
Yeah. And you can't just go get a book or watch a YouTube video about something that you don't know what you're looking for, right? So a lot of times the mentor will just be riffing, and then they'll hit on something like, oh my God, I never thought about that. I should totally do that, you know? And but you would never know to go look for that in the first place, which is
No, most definitely.
yeah,
I think it also just takes time to know what good is. You know, even if you could go learn the foundational principles or tenets of a thing, that doesn't mean that you would be able to identify those nuanced points that you're talking about, right?
yeah,
Those things could just like fly right past you.
for sure.
So having
And they
the
do all the time. There's things that I should be doing flying by my head daily, and I don't
daily.
know. I can't even see them. They're invisible. But a mentor will at least say, "Hey," puts it right in my mouth. Say, "Here, take this." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's a good idea."
Yeah, well, I love that so much. Jarrette, I want to be respectful of your time today. And we really, again, like I said, enjoy having you as a part of this 2020 cohort. Could you maybe wrap this up with us and share like what does the horizon for TenFore Golf look like, maybe over the next 6 months or so?
Next 6 months is lots and lots of launches. So um, we've got six for sure, and that number could double very soon. I've got a new guy who named Don who reached out to us, and he's got 15 years of SaaS um, business development experience. He just got laid off from COVID from a big company, and he loves golf. And he found out about our startup um, through one of the startup investor sites that I registered on, and reached out to us. And he's working. We worked out a deal with him where basically he's going to be making 40% commission on whatever he brings in of gross, and some equity bonuses down the road if he meets certain milestones. So he's already hit the ground running, and so I'm expecting to be really busy in the next year and a half, and just grow as big as we can grow, and take out all these old fogey apps off the market, put them out of business, and going international is a big one for us. So we're working with a partner that is going to be our reseller in Asia, and so there's 7,000 courses that are kind of up for grabs right now. So that's another one. That's a kind of a pie in the sky one, but we'll see.
No, I mean, hey, you know what? There are courses all over the world, and especially like now that we're in 2020, like there's a global economy, and
Yeah,
basically almost any software solution you're building can be deployed at scale worldwide very
yeah.
quickly and very easily. And so it would be silly maybe not to necessarily consider what that might look like for you guys. So congratulations on that, and for bringing in an extra salesperson, because especially since you're doing organic growth and you already have the platform, it really is just a matter of getting those customers on board to really see you hit those metrics you're looking for. So thank you for sharing that. With that, I think we're going to wrap up today for our 6 out of 7 startup spotlights for the 2020 Pre-accelerator. Coming up on Friday, if you guys haven't already signed up for it, we have our community fund pitches. We've got 4 or 5 finalists who are going to be pitching to win $25,000 safe note. That's part of our Geekdom community fund. And that's exclusively for our members. And we'd love to showcase them and the wonderful things that they're up to. Jarrette, thank you so much. I'm going to see you Thursday for our final week 6 session with our Pre-accelerator mentors and speakers. And with that, everybody have a fantastic Tuesday.